Close your eyes for a moment and breathe deeply. Think about what it feels like to already live the life you've been dreaming of. Not someday in the future, not when you finally have the money, not when all the conditions align, but now, in this very moment. Your millionaire life has already begun. It is not waiting for you somewhere in the distance. It is unfolding in you, through you, as you dare to feel it real. The truth is simple: you are not moving toward wealth. Wealth is moving toward you the moment you embody it. The life you long for is already yours. The only question is, are you willing to feel it now? Every fortune that has ever been built, every empire that has ever risen, every invention that has ever transformed the world began in the unseen world of imagination. Before the first brick was laid, before the first dollar was earned, before the first investor took notice, there was a vision. Someone, somewhere, dared to see it not with their eyes, but with their inner sight. They carried it within themselves like a seed, unseen yet already alive. You may look at your present circumstances and see limitations. You may see numbers in your bank account that do not yet reflect the life you desire. You may look around at your home, your job, your surroundings, and say to yourself, how can I possibly be wealthy when this is my reality? But let me tell you the truth: reality does not begin in what you see. Reality begins in what you dare to imagine and feel. The visible world is nothing more than a shadow of the unseen world. Your imagination is not daydreaming, it is creation in its earliest stage. Think of the great skyscrapers that tower over cities today. At one point, they did not exist in steel or stone. They existed only in the mind of an architect. They were lines on a piece of paper, but before even that, they were lines drawn in the imagination. The architect saw them before anyone else could, and by holding that vision step by step, the world conformed to it. That is how creation works. The external always follows the internal. The riches you seek are not waiting in some distant future. They are waiting for you to accept them in your imagination now. You might say, but I have no evidence. How can I believe in what I cannot see? Yet consider this: every human achievement you now take for granted was once invisible. The device you hold in your hand, the chair you sit on, the clothes you wear, none of it existed until it was first imagined. A person dared to see beyond what was visible. And because they persisted in that vision, it became fact. Why should your wealth be any different? There is a man I once knew who worked as a janitor. His life seemed small, his paycheck barely enough to survive. Yet he carried within himself a vision of abundance. Each night after his shift, he would sit in his small room and imagine himself living a life of freedom and wealth. He would picture himself stepping out of a luxurious car, feel the smooth leather seats beneath him, hear the sound of the engine humming. He would imagine writing checks without hesitation, traveling to places he had never seen, standing in homes far beyond what his current reality could allow. At first, nothing changed. His days still looked the same, his pockets still felt empty. But he did not waver. He knew that imagination was the seed and reality was the soil. He watered that seed with feeling, with conviction, and with faith. In time, opportunities began to present themselves, small at first, then greater. He started a small cleaning service, which grew into a company, which expanded into contracts, until years later he was living the very life he had once only imagined. From janitor to millionaire, the bridge between the two was built entirely in imagination before it was ever walked in reality. This is not magic, this is law. Your mind is the soil of creation. What you dare to plant in it will in time grow. But you must understand, planting is not mere wishing. To plant is to feel it as real, to accept it as though it were already yours, to live inwardly in the reality you long to see outwardly. When you do this, you set forces in motion that the outer world must obey. Some will argue, but I must see it first to believe it. And that is where they remain stuck in the prison of appearances. For the truth is, you must first believe it to see it. The world is only a mirror reflecting back to you the state you hold within. If you feel poor, life will show you poverty. If you feel abundant, life will echo that abundance. Not because life is cruel or kind, but because life is obedient. It gives to each according to the measure of their inner belief. History is filled with men and women who began in obscurity but rose to unimaginable heights because they held fast to an inner vision. Think of Andrew Carnegie, the son of a poor weaver in Scotland who immigrated to America with nothing. As a boy, he imagined himself wealthy, surrounded by libraries, learning, and opportunity. That vision carried him forward until he became one of the richest men of his time and used his fortune to build the very libraries he once dreamed of. His riches did not appear by accident. They were born in the unseen long before they appeared in the seen. The same is true for you. If you wish to change your life, change first what you dare to imagine. Stop looking at your bank account as a verdict. It is not a final judgment. It is only a reflection of the state you have held until now. But in this moment, you can choose a new state. You can close your eyes and see yourself already wealthy, already free, already abundant. And if you hold to that vision, no matter what the world shows you, you will find that life begins to bend, to shift, to bring you evidence of what you dare to feel. Do not despise the small beginnings. A seed is small, invisible once planted, yet within it lies the power of an entire tree. Your imagination may feel fragile, like a whisper against the noise of your current reality, but it carries within it the force of transformation. Nurture it, return to it daily. Water it with faith and gratitude. The moment you decide to feel yourself wealthy in imagination, you have already begun your millionaire life. So stop waiting for proof, for conditions, for timing. The proof will come, the conditions will align, the timing will unfold, but none of these will happen until you first plant the seed within. Wealth begins not in the bank, but in the mind. It begins not with what you see, but with what you dare to imagine. It is not enough to simply think about wealth. To sit and let the mind drift casually over the idea of money is like staring at seeds in your hand and never planting them. Thought alone, without feeling, is shallow. But when you allow yourself to feel the reality of wealth as though it were already yours, something remarkable begins to take place. You shift the very foundation of your being. You step out of wishing and into living. The secret lies in learning to think not of what you desire, but from it. There is a vast difference. To think of wealth is to imagine it as something outside of you, something distant, something that belongs to another time. But to think from wealth is to accept it as the state you already occupied. It is to wake in the morning and breathe as though abundance were your natural air, to walk through the day with the quiet assurance that all is provided, to rest at night with the ease of one who knows his security cannot be shaken. Ask yourself honestly, how would you feel if your greatest financial desires were already accomplished? How would you carry yourself if every bill were paid with ease, if every door of opportunity opened to you, if the weight of lack no longer pressed against your mind? That feeling, that inner assurance is the very key. When you clothe yourself in it now, life must reflect it back to you in form. Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow and before reaching for your phone, you pause. You do not begin the day in worry, nor do you calculate how to stretch what little you think you have. Instead, you lie there in silence and allow yourself to feel the joy of being financially free. You picture yourself opening your banking app and seeing numbers beyond what you once thought possible. You hear yourself telling a loved one, "It's all taken care of." You walk into your kitchen and make breakfast with the ease of one who knows no lack. This is not idle fantasy. This is practice. This is training the inner world to become the master of the outer. Science itself has shown the truth of this. Neuroscientists have discovered that the brain does not distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a physical one. The same neural pathways light up, the same emotions surge through the body. In other words, if you feel rich within, your mind and body already believe it to be so. And when the inner man accepts a state as real, the outer world will inevitably rearrange itself to reflect that conviction. Consider the athlete who trains for victory. Long before the race, long before the crowd, he closes his eyes and feels himself breaking the tape at the finish line. He hears the roar of the audience. He feels the strain of his muscles. He experiences the triumph in his imagination until his body can no longer tell the difference. By the time the race comes, his victory has already been lived within him. Is it any wonder then that so many champions speak of having won in their mind before they ever stepped onto the track? Wealth obeys the same principle. You cannot approach it as a beggar asking for crumbs. You must approach it as one who already possesses it. Walk into the store as though you belong there, not as though you are out of place. Hold money in your hands with reverence, not with fear. When you pay for something, do not sigh as though life has taken from you, but smile as though abundance flows through you. These subtle shifts in feeling alter the course of your entire life. I knew a woman once who lived in constant anxiety about money. Each bill filled her with dread, each purchase carried guilt. She longed for freedom, yet her state was one of bondage. One day she decided to try a simple experiment. Each night before she fell asleep, she imagined herself lying in a spacious home. Her bed large and comfortable, her heart at ease. She felt the softness of the sheets, the weightlessness of financial freedom, the peace of knowing her family was cared for. She did this night after night, not straining, not begging, simply resting in the feeling. Within a year, opportunities unfolded in ways she could never have orchestrated. Her small side business grew, doors opened, income multiplied, and today she lives in the very home she once imagined. She did not chase wealth, she entered the state of already having it, and life had no choice but to follow. Do you see now why feeling is the secret doorway? You may spend years working harder, pushing, striving, but without a change in state, you will find yourself repeating the same patterns. It is not effort alone that creates transformation. It is the assumption from which the effort flows. When you act from the feeling of lack, no matter how hard you work, you carry poverty with you. But when you act from the feeling of wealth, doors open effortlessly. People are drawn to you, and ideas present themselves with clarity. Do not be deceived by appearances. You may look at your circumstances today and see emptiness. You may see unpaid bills, limited income, closed doors. But these are only shadows of the state you have carried until now. The moment you shift your inner feeling, appearances must eventually yield. Just as the seasons cannot resist the turning of the earth, so too the outer world cannot resist the inner change of state. So begin today. Do not wait for proof. Do not say, I will feel rich when the money comes. That is like saying, I will plant when the harvest appears. It cannot work that way. Plant the seed now. Feel the wealth now. Walk through this day as one who has already received. Speak to yourself as though the promise is fulfilled. Rest tonight in the assurance that you are already the person you long to be. This practice is not difficult. It requires no tools, no audience, no resources other than your own imagination. It only requires that you dare to suspend disbelief and live inwardly in the state you choose. At first, it may feel strange, even foolish, but if you persist, the feeling will take root. And once it does, the world must conform. The wealth you desire is not waiting somewhere in the future. It is waiting in you now, waiting to be felt, waiting to be accepted. The moment you embody the feeling of already being wealthy, you set in motion currents that cannot be stopped. Life will bend, people will appear, opportunities will align, and soon what was once only a dream will stand before you as fact. Gratitude is the language of the wealthy. It is the quiet acknowledgement that life is already abundant, even before the outward evidence fully arrives. When you train yourself to see what is good, what is already present, what is already working in your favor, you align yourself with a current that multiplies blessings. To live in gratitude is to declare, I am already rich, and that declaration calls forth more. The one who cannot appreciate the small will never hold the great, for their heart is closed. But the one who rejoices in the little opens the floodgates for the greater to pour in. Look around you. Perhaps the sum in your bank account is not yet the figure you desire. Perhaps the house you live in is not the mansion you dream of. Perhaps the car you drive does not yet sparkle with luxury. But is there not something even now for which you can give thanks? The chair on which you sit, the breath in your lungs, the meal you ate this morning, the people who care for you, the moments of laughter you have known. These are riches. And when you dare to call them riches, you shift your state. You are no longer pleading from poverty, you are affirming abundance. There was once a man who lived on little more than hope. His work was tedious, his income meager, his prospects dim. But one day he heard a simple truth: give thanks for what you already have. So he began. Each night before sleep, he wrote down 5 things. At first they were small: his worn shoes that still carried him through the day, the kindness of a stranger who held open a door, the warmth of sunlight through his window. Slowly, something changed in him. He no longer carried himself as a beggar of life. He carried himself as one who already possessed much. Within months, new opportunities emerged. His confidence grew, and he stepped into a level of success he had never thought possible. His wealth did not come because life suddenly became kind. It came because he became grateful, and gratitude opened the way. Do not underestimate the power of this practice. The world reflects your inner posture. If you approach life with complaint, always declaring what is wrong, what is missing, what is lacking, life will echo those declarations back to you. But if you approach life with thanksgiving, declaring what is good, what is present, what is working, then the mirror of life must show you more of the same. Gratitude is not about pretending that problems do not exist. It is about recognizing that even within difficulty, abundance can be found. And when you focus on that abundance, it grows. Consider the farmer. When he looks at his field, he does not curse the small sprouts for being too little. He rejoices in them, for he knows they are the promise of harvest. He tends them with care, waters them, nurtures them, because he sees in them the fullness of what will be. If he were to despise the small beginnings, he would trample on them and lose the harvest entirely. So it is with your life. Gratitude is the tending of the seed. It is the watering of the promise. It is the assurance that what is small today carries within it the greatness of tomorrow. There was a young woman who dreamed of traveling the world. At the time, she could not even afford to leave her small town. She worked long hours at a modest job, and each paycheck barely covered her expenses. Yet she began a simple practice. Each morning she whispered thanks for the bus ride that carried her safely, for the meals she could afford, for the books at the library that let her mind travel where her body could not. Slowly, she began to save a little. Unexpected gifts came her way. A friend offered her a chance to join a short trip at a discounted rate. That trip led to connections. Those connections led to opportunities. And within a few years, she found herself traveling more than she had ever dreamed possible. Her gratitude had prepared her to receive. This is how wealth begins. Not with the sudden arrival of millions, but with a heart that says, I am already provided for. Gratitude takes the focus away from what is missing and places it on what is present. And what you focus on expands. If you dwell on lack, lack grows larger. If you dwell on abundance, abundance multiplies. Many people believe they must wait until they are rich to feel grateful. They say, when I have more money, when I have a better house, when I achieve my goals, then I will give thanks. But this is like saying, when the harvest is ready, then I will water the seeds. Gratitude must come first. It is the watering, the nurturing, the condition that makes the harvest possible. To wait for gratitude until you see abundance is to never see abundance at all. Think of the simple power of shifting one thought. Imagine opening your wallet and instead of sighing at what seems too little, you say, thank you for this. Thank you for the flow that moves through me. Imagine receiving a bill and instead of cursing it, you say, thank you for the service this represents, for the roof over my head, for the electricity that lights my home, for the food I have enjoyed. This shift turns obligation into blessing, burden into opportunity. And as you do this, you will notice your state transform. You will no longer walk with heaviness, but with lightness. And that state of abundance draws more abundance to it. There is a reason why even great fortunes often vanish from those who never learned gratitude. Without thanksgiving, wealth becomes a prison. Never enough, always slipping through grasping hands. But with gratitude, even the little becomes much, and the much becomes lasting. Gratitude anchors wealth, it grounds abundance in joy. It ensures that you not only receive, but that you remain capable of holding and enjoying what you receive. So let gratitude be your constant companion. When you wake, give thanks. When you eat, give thanks. When you walk through the day, give thanks for the air, the sky, the people, the opportunities. Not mechanically, but sincerely, with the recognition that you are already surrounded by more than many could dream of. As you live this way, your heart opens wider and wider, and life pours more and more into it. Gratitude is the secret by which the millionaire life begins, not tomorrow, not someday, but now, in this very moment. Action is never separate from who you believe yourself to be. Every step you take, every choice you make, every word you speak flows naturally from the state you occupy within yourself. A poor man in consciousness may stumble into a fortune, but without changing his inner sense of self, he will find a way to lose it, for his actions cannot outgrow his belief about who he is. Likewise, a rich man in consciousness may stand for a time with little, but his actions will carry the mark of abundance, and sooner or later, the wealth around him will match what he already knows himself to be. The world responds not to effort alone, but to the tone of your being, the state from which you move. Imagine two men walking into the same room. One carries within himself the feeling of lack, the belief that he does not belong, that he is always the one overlooked, the one left behind. The other walks in with the quiet assurance that life bends in his favor, that he belongs wherever he stands, that opportunities look for him as much as he looks for them. They see the same room, but they do not experience the same world. The first hesitates, doubts, and shrinks back. The second moves with confidence, attracts attention, and commands respect, and life responds to each accordingly. Nothing outside of them made the difference. Their inner state did. This is why so many strive and labor and yet remain in the same place. They try to act their way into wealth while still feeling poor within. Their actions are strained, unnatural, driven by fear rather than by certainty. But when you embody the feeling of already being wealthy, action flows easily, naturally, without resistance. You begin to dress a little sharper, not to impress others, but because it feels natural to the person you have already become within. You begin to speak more clearly, more confidently, not because you force yourself to, but because the wealthy version of you does so without effort. You begin to make decisions with courage, not because you memorize strategies, but because abundance thinks in terms of expansion, not limitation. There was once a man who longed to start his own business. He read countless books, took endless courses, and yet he hesitated, always doubting, always saying, "When I have more money, when I know more, when I feel ready." He never acted because inwardly he still felt like a man who was small, undeserving, incapable. One day he was challenged to change not his outer conditions but his inner assumptions. He began to live as though he already were the successful business owner he dreamed of being. He imagined what it felt like to walk into a room knowing he carried value. He began to dress as though he already represented something bigger. He carried himself with dignity, he spoke with conviction, and slowly, his actions aligned with this new state. Within months, he launched the very business he had delayed for years, and opportunities began to find him. His success did not come from the books alone, but from embodying the state from which right action flowed. Think of the actor who prepares for a role. He does not simply memorize lines. He studies the character until he feels himself to be the character. His gestures, his posture, his tone of voice shift. He begins to think from the perspective of the role until eventually he no longer pretends, he becomes. And the audience believes it because he believes it. In the same way, you are the actor on the stage of life, and the role you play is chosen within. If you choose to act from poverty, no matter how convincing your outer performance, the cracks will show. But if you assume the role of wealth inwardly, the outer performance flows effortlessly, and life itself becomes your audience, responding to the authenticity of your state. This is why it is not enough to simply do the actions of a wealthy person. You must feel yourself to be that person. Without that inner shift, the actions will feel hollow. But once you make the shift, the smallest action carries immense power. Even a simple handshake, a simple conversation, a simple decision begins to carry weight because it flows from an inner certainty. Wealth is not in the number of dollars you move, but in the quality of presence you bring. I once knew a woman who worked in an ordinary office job. By appearances, she had little, but inwardly she lived as though she were already abundant. She dressed with elegance, not extravagance, but care. She spoke with assurance. She treated her co-workers with the generosity of one who had more than enough, and she walked with the poise of someone who belonged to a greater story. Within a short time, she was offered promotions, then leadership roles, and eventually started her own consultancy. Those around her would say she was lucky or in the right place at the right time. But what truly happened was that she acted from her inner wealth until the outer world had to align. Life is always listening to the vibration of your being. You do not attract wealth by chasing it. You attract it by embodying the state of one who already has it. From that state, you will know what to do. You will know which door to walk through, which opportunity to seize, which idea to pursue. And because you move from a place of abundance, not fear, your actions will bear fruit. So let your focus be not on forcing action, but on embodying the state from which right action flows. If you want to know what kind of actions a wealthy person takes, simply step into that feeling now and see how it changes you. You may find yourself speaking up in a meeting where once you stayed silent. You may find yourself investing in your growth where once you hesitated. You may find yourself walking into new spaces where once you felt unworthy. And as you do these things not from striving but from natural expression, the world will reflect it back. The key is persistence. At first, it may feel unusual to carry yourself differently, to speak differently, to dress differently. But soon it becomes natural. The wealthy man or woman you long to be is already within you. Allow them to express themselves through your choices, and soon those choices will build a life that matches the state you have claimed. Do not wait for money to make you act wealthy. Act from wealth within, and the money will follow. There will come moments when everything in the outer world contradicts the vision you hold within. You will look at your circumstances and they will appear small, limited, stubbornly fixed in place. The bills will not vanish overnight. The phone calls will not always bring good news, and those around you may even remind you of what they call reality. But you must remember that appearances are never the final word. They are only the outpicturing of an older state, a reflection of what you once believed, not a prophecy of what must always be. To yield to appearances is to abandon the seed just as it begins to take root. To persist in the vision, no matter how loud the evidence of lack may seem, is to trust the unseen law that governs life. Think of the farmer who plants his seed. For weeks, he may look at the soil and see nothing. If he were impatient, if he demanded proof at once, he might dig up the ground, disturb the seed, and destroy the very process that would have given him his harvest. But the wise farmer knows the invisible work that is taking place beneath the surface. Though his eyes cannot see it, the seed is germinating, roots are forming, life is stirring. And so he waits with faith, tending to the soil, trusting the process. Your vision is no different. What you dare to assume as true may not appear at once, but beneath the surface of appearances, life is already rearranging itself to bring it forth. Consider the story of the author who dreamed of sharing her work with the world. She was a single mother, struggling to make ends meet, rejected by publisher after publisher. To anyone looking from the outside, her dream was impossible. Yet she refused to let rejection be her reality. Each night she returned to her vision of success, of her books in the hands of millions, of the freedom it would bring her family. She persisted when appearances screamed no, and in time her persistence became history. Today her name is known around the globe. Her wealth is beyond measure, and all because she did not abandon her inner vision when the outer world offered no encouragement. This is the law. Persistence bridges the gap between the invisible and the visible. Anyone can feel wealthy when money is already flowing. Anyone can rejoice when success is already evident. But the one who persists in feeling wealth in the face of lack, in feeling freedom while still in chains, in feeling abundance while still surrounded by little, that one proves the creative power of faith. For soon the outer must conform to the inner, and when it does, the one who persisted will not be surprised, for they lived in that reality long before the world caught up. There was once a man I knew who had a vision of owning a home for his family. For years, his circumstances told him it was impossible. His income was small, his savings were almost nothing, and every time he passed by houses for sale, a voice within him whispered, "Not for you." But he learned to silence that voice and replace it with a new one. Each evening, as he closed his eyes, he imagined walking through the door of his own home. He felt the weight of the keys in his hand. He heard the laughter of his children in the rooms. He smelled the warmth of a meal cooking in the kitchen. He did this night after night, persisting even when the landlord raised the rent, even when friends laughed at his dream. Months turned to years, but he refused to let go of the vision. And then, as though out of nowhere, opportunities opened. A promotion came, a loan was approved, a door that had once been locked swung wide. Today he lives in the very house he once only visited in imagination. His outer life is simply the harvest of his persistence. Do not be discouraged when life seems to resist you. Resistance is only the echo of the old state fading away. If you have ever stood at the shore and thrown a stone into the water, you have seen the ripples spread outward. They do not stop at once, they take time to settle. So it is with states of consciousness. The old state may echo for a while, showing you remnants of poverty or lack. But if you persist in your new vision, those ripples must eventually fade, and the new state will take full possession of your world. The danger is in giving up too soon. Many begin with enthusiasm, but when appearances do not change immediately, they return to doubt, undoing the very work they had begun. They dig up the seed to check if it is growing, and in doing so, they halt its progress. But the wise know that persistence is the secret ingredient. It is not enough to feel wealth once or twice. You must return to the state again and again until it becomes natural, until it feels more real than the evidence of your senses. When you can look at lack and still feel abundance, when you can look at closed doors and still feel opportunities opening, when you can look at emptiness and still feel fullness, then you are truly living from your vision. Think of the sculptor. He looks at a block of stone and sees the figure hidden within. To anyone else, it is just rock, unshaped, ordinary. But he persists in his vision. Day after day, he chips away, removing what does not belong, holding fast to the image in his mind. At times, the progress seems slow. At times, the stone seems unyielding. But he does not abandon his vision. He knows what is hidden within, and with persistence, the figure emerges for all to see. Your life is that block of stone, and your persistence is the chisel. If you hold to the image of your millionaire life, if you refuse to accept appearances as final, then step by step, the life you have imagined will emerge from the substance of your days. Remember this: life does not test you with obstacles to deny you. It reveals whether you are willing to persist. The outer world bends only to those who do not bend inwardly. The one who persists has already won, for persistence is the proof of belief, and belief, held steadily, must clothe itself in fact. So here is the truth: your millionaire life has already begun. It is not ahead of you, it is within you, waiting to be felt. Begin in imagination, feel the state real, give thanks for what you have, act from the confidence of wealth, and persist no matter what appears. If you dare to feel rich now, life will conspire to make it so. Wealth will no longer be something you chase, it will be something you awaken to.